was abandoned by President Clinton. NAACP Executive Director Benjamin Chavis, who at the age of 15 attended the first march on Washington. Dr. Lewis Sullivan, Secretary of Health under President Bush, now president of the Congressional Black Caucus. Civil rights at the crossroads, an issue facing the nation.
Face the Nation with Chief Washington Correspondent Bob Schieffer. And now, from Washington, substituting for Bob Schieffer, CBS News correspondent Eric Engberg.
Welcome. Joining us here first today is Lonnie Guinier, Professor of Law at the University of Pennsylvania. Welcome, Professor Guinier. You've just returned from a vacation on Martha's Vineyard, where the president was also vacationing. Up until a couple of days ago, he had made no attempt to contact you, and there were people talking about that. Did he ever call?
No.
Do you regard that as a snub, an attempt to distance himself from some of the controversial positions that you've represented?
I don't think that the president's social calendar while he's on vacation is the most important issue for either him or me. I think what I'd like to talk about is the president's civil rights policy and the civil rights agenda for the future.
And we'll get to that, but in connection with your own case, your own nomination, having had a chance to think about this some, what does the way your nomination was handled, what does it tell us, do you think, about Bill Clinton as a leader?
Well, I think it tells us more about the state of this nation and the state of denial in which we find ourselves about the issue of race and racism. I think the administration at least has articulated a commitment to enforce the civil rights laws vigorously. But the problem is whether the administration, given the current atmosphere, is prepared to discuss and to defend vigorously and openly its civil rights agenda.
Well, in your case, your nomination was not vigorously defended. They walked away from it. And some have drawn from that the lesson that this president has a tendency to duck controversies.
Well, I think that the important lesson of my nomination is that my nomination was a metaphor for the state of denial in which this nation finds itself. I was accused basically of being a quota queen, not because I advocated quotas, but because I openly talked about the problems of race, the problems of racism. I was essentially punished as the messenger who was bringing us the bad news.
Have you changed or moderated any of your views as a result of this controversy or in the aftermath of this controversy?
My views about
well, I was thinking your views on such matters as representation, whether minority legislators should be have extra power to veto decisions that might involve minority rights. Some of the law review articles that you wrote that were so controversial at the time your nomination was made.
I have not changed my views. I am simply more committed to articulating clearly what my views are. I never advocated anything, even in the controversial law review articles, that comes close to what I was accused of saying. I never said that minority legislators should have more votes than anyone else. I believe in one person, one vote. I believe in democracy, and all that I have ever written or advocated is an effort to make America a genuine democracy, not to give some people special rights.
Well, let me ask you about one of the articles in a 1991 law review. You proposed that courts might require legislative bodies to give representatives of minority groups a veto over legislation, quote, of vital importance to minority interests. Some people thought that that was a violation of the American attitude towards majority rule.
In fact, that is consistent with the supermajority rules in the Senate to cut off debate. It's consistent with the supermajority rules to pass a treaty. The notion of majority rule is a notion that I support, but majority rule should not be unfettered. I think James Madison talked about the tyranny of the majority and the need not only to see that the majority rules, but to ensure that the minority has some representation. And that was the balance or the important aspect of democracy that I felt we might be overlooking in some of our recent court decisions.
You've talked about this a little bit, but let me get you to, as a law professor, let me get you to give a grade to the president. How do you grade Bill Clinton on civil rights matters as of now?
Well, I think that we're still waiting for him to hand in his homework.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, are there litmus test issues coming up down the road that the civil rights community will be watching very carefully? Can you give us some kind of a feel for when you think you will have that homework ready to grade?
I don't like to talk about litmus tests. I think what the president has an opportunity to do, and what I think he has the potential to do, is to be a racial healer. And I think that in order to do that, he has to talk about the problems of race and racism. He has to confront the problems, not just talk about things in vague generalities. I think the president is committed to vigorously enforcing the civil rights laws, but we're still waiting to see action, not just words.
Well, one coming test that many people think will tell us more about the Clinton administration is the appointment of Joycelyn Elders to be the Attorney General, or the Surgeon General. Like you, she's an African-American woman who has been involved in some controversial decisions. And do you think that nomination is going to be coming up in a week or so? Have you been satisfied with the amount of support that the Clinton administration has given to her?
That's really a question you need to ask Dr. Elders. Dr. Elders is being nominated for Surgeon General, and while I think that's a very important position, it's not a civil rights position. I'm not sure you can compare the treatment of Dr. Elders to the treatment that I received.
Do you have any doubts or any concerns that he might not stand behind that appointment?
I don't have any information one way or the other. I'm sorry.
Okay. Professor Guinier, thanks, and we'll be coming back and broadening our discussion with our panel when we return in a minute.
This portion of Face the Nation is sponsored by the Archer Daniels Midland Company. ADM, supermarket to the world.
Look what ADM Research has cooked up. An all-vegetable patty that contains dietary fiber, is low in fat, and free of cholesterol. One that's made to meet the demands of vegetarians and other health-conscious consumers. It's the Midland Harvest brand Harvest Burger. And so far, it's made a big impression everywhere it's landed. ADM, supermarket to the world.
It may surprise you to learn who, over 30 years ago, was the first car maker to build cars with seat belts, to make safety glass standard, the first U.S. car maker to offer anti-lock brakes, and who today offers more models with dual airbags than any other manufacturer. That company is Ford Motor Company.
We're committed to making safety innovation an important part of quality.
Ford Motor Company. Quality is job one. It's working.
Joining us now, Benjamin Chavis, Executive Director of the NAACP, Dr. Louis Sullivan, President of Morehouse School of Medicine, and Representative Gary Franks of Connecticut. Welcome. The 30-year commemorative march yesterday in Washington did not draw the large crowd, certainly of the 63 march, and there were some people that were disappointed in the turnout.
I was not disappointed. This was a large march. There's a dispute, as always, about the numbers. The march organizers, including us, we're saying it was 200,000. Park Service saying 75,000. But just to say, tens of thousands of people marched. And this is a very important step forward for the civil rights movement. The fact that in 1993, you can get that many people from across the United States to come out in the hot sun to raise their voices for jobs, justice, and peace, I think is very significant.
Well, I did not see the administration at the event. I thought that if not the President of the United States, possibly Mr. Gore could welcome many of the civil rights leaders into the White House to truly commemorate the anniversary of the March on Washington. So I was somewhat disappointed by that, as well as I'd hoped for a larger crowd, but I was thankful for the crowd that we had.
Let me ask you this. Regardless of the numbers fight, and I agree with you that there's always going to be disagreements about these things, was back in the 60s even, but there has been some talk that young people especially are not as fired up about civil rights activities as they were during the time when Dr. King was leading the movement, and that maybe it's time to give young people more of a chance in the civil rights movement to step forward and replace their elders. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dr. Sullivan?
I think what we face now are many more challenges, many different foci of interest. Educational opportunities need to be expanded. The health care of our citizens needs to be improved. We certainly need to have more of our young people participating in the political process. We also need to have job development and business development in our cities. Overarching all of those is a sense of hope. I think that's what we need to be sure that our young people have. Hope in the future, hope in things changing, and using those parameters to see that we work to improve our communities. So I think we really have a lot more than the legal issues of civil rights. Those are still important, but all of these others are areas where real progress is going to be made in the future.
Professor, you see a lot of young people.
In my classes,
Yes.
you mean? I think that there's a lot of energy in our youth, and what we need to do is to tap into that energy and to help to create a climate in which people are not afraid to talk about the hard problems. One of the most disillusioning aspects of the recent past is the fear that people have to talk about controversial issues. And I think that that may be an unfortunate legacy of certain administration policies in the past which were committed to polarizing people, not to building consensus.
Well, let me ask a question of our two Republican members of this panel. There has been some criticism from civil rights leaders that one of the reasons why there seems to be some apathy is that 12 years of Republican leadership have kind of made young people feel that there isn't any hope.
Well, I would strongly argue that. Even going beyond that, back during the 70s, more blacks went on to major institutions during the 70s than any other time in our history. More blacks started their own business. More blacks were able to work with Fortune 500 type companies. During the 80s, more blacks moved into the middle class than during any other time of our history. More blacks were able to purchase a one-family home during that time, and also able to purchase their first or second car. So there was a great deal of progress that was gained during those times. Yes.
But at the same time, the more blacks are moving into the middle class. More blacks move into power.
We have a major problem. The problem is that we have too many single parents out there, and the never married single mothers who are now giving birth to children at a rate faster than married mothers in the African American community. So I think that's one of our major problems.
Let me also add to this.
I think while my Republican friends are trying to apologize,
I was not apologizing. I was bragging about those years, quite frankly.
You shouldn't brag that the Reagan administration and Bush administration were fundamentally against civil rights. We had serious
in 1990, we passed the civil 1991. In 1991, we passed a civil rights bill that passed with a larger majority than any other civil rights bill in the history of our country. That was in 1991.
But why was that bill necessary?
Right.
That bill was necessary to respond to setbacks that the United States Supreme Court had issued based on decisions that were issued by justices appointed by Presidents Reagan and Bush. So that was not a move forward. That was simply a corrective action.
I think that we have to recognize that when you look at the Black Enterprise 100, you find black businesses are larger. They are moving into the middle class. You have blacks on boards. You have blacks moving in many positions, including the Bush administration has not gotten credit for the fact that there were more blacks appointed to significant high-level positions in the federal government than had occurred in any administration before. So the issue here is leadership. And I think Lonnie Guinier indeed apologized for Bill Clinton. He apologized because he did not give her the opportunity to articulate those views that she's just done a few minutes ago on this program, to explain what her writings are all about. You see that she's a very articulate, reasoned person. He ran away from this. What we need is leadership. Certainly you had that in Bush and Reagan.
Did you support the Guinier nomination?
I can tell you that I see this as a very, very bright, articulate young woman, I think, who brings a diversity of views. And that's the other thing that I think this show points out. There is a diversity of views in the black community. That's healthy. Yeah. I'd like to see her views debated and discussed. We didn't have that opportunity to hear about that. And certainly you did not see people running away from their nominations in the Bush administration. John Tower was defeated. but you didn't ever hear one iota of the President Bush backing away. He stood for something, and people respected him for it.
Another example would be Bill Lucas. Bill Lucas vied for the same position that Ms. Grenier has vied for. Now, many of his views were quite controversial.
No, he was not defeated because of his views. He was defeated because he was not competent.
George Bush had a chance. George Bush supported Mr. Lucas and gave Mr. Lucas a chance to express his views. President Clinton did not give Mrs. Grenier the same opportunity.
Listen, I want to go back to something else. The NAACP, we are both Republicans and Democrats. So I want to speak
I know that.
I want to speak for you right now. We believe that Wall Street needs to be desegregated, that the corporate suites need to be desegregated. And while Secretary Sullivan says, Dr. Sullivan now says that there were many more blacks that went into corporate America. Yes, they went into a situation that has a glass ceiling. They could not move up. When I hear about a lot of those brothers and sisters at the Fortune 500 companies, they can't move up. The new round for civil rights, as we step forward, is to deal with the economics as much as we dealt with the politics. We want economic empowerment, economic development.
Oh, I agree
I want
with
our
you.
branches.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad we
Really?
agree. I'm glad we agree. So going back to what Lonnie says is correct. Racism has so permeated this society that their institutionalized framework, even in the business community, prevents African Americans and other minorities from moving up.
It's an interesting subject, and I think we'll come back and talk about that subject in just a minute, but right now we're going to take a short break.
A new chapter has begun in Merrill Lynch's history in Asia. We are the first American securities firm invited to open an office in mainland China. Being there gives our financial consultants a different perspective, which makes a difference for our clients. The difference is Merrill Lynch.
Something is terribly wrong with these pictures, but you could look all day and not see it. The problem is carbon monoxide, an invisible, deadly pollutant emitted in auto exhaust. Fortunately, there's a way to help reduce these emissions. Ethanol, a renewable fuel derived from corn grown by the American farmer. And now, for the first time ever, the Clean Air Act requires ethanol and other oxygenated fuels to be used in 39 of the nation's most polluted cities during the winter months. When this program was tested in Denver, atmospheric levels of carbon monoxide dropped 8% in the first 2 months, and they're still dropping. No wonder it became a model for cleaning up the air in cities all over the country. The problem of carbon monoxide may be invisible, but the solution is becoming clearer every day.
In 14 cities and 10 countries across the Pacific, they're playing our song. United Airlines. Come fly the airline that's uniting the world. Come fly the friendly skies.
They made themselves millionaires, and they'll tell you how they did it. Plus, James Taylor, better than ever.
This week on CBS This Morning with Harry Smith and Paula Zahn.
We're back with our distinguished panel on civil rights. Professor Grenier has already given the president a homework due grade on his administration's attitude toward civil rights so far. Let me ask the rest of you to give him a grade. Dr. Sullivan?
I think Professor Grenier was very kind and gentle to the president. I'm also an educational administrator. My grade's F, because Professor Grenier's episode's not the only episode. There has been a pattern of many nominees being brought forward and then dropped at the first sign of controversy. We need to have an atmosphere of discussion, open discussion, even about controversial views in our country. We need to have leadership that really sticks by its principles, whatever those principles are, and let's then debate the merit of those principles.
Shavis?
Well, you have to compare, if you're going to compare Bill Clinton to George Bush or to Ronald Reagan, first of all, Bush got an F, Reagan got an F. Now, Clinton gets an I because the homework is not in. We're waiting to see. He has made a promise, he's made a commitment to civil rights. And once he comes back from Martha's Vineyard, we in the NAACP and the whole civil rights community, we're going to sit down with the president to make sure that he comes in with a high mark.
Congressman?
Oh, definitely enough. He has snubbed the African-American community in a number of ways. He received 82% of the vote from the African-American community, and yet, as I stated earlier, he was out playing golf when the march was taking place. I would also give him an F because of the fact that I'm just a strong advocate for less government, less taxation, and less spending.
What did George Bush and Ronald Reagan do for civil rights?
As I stated before, we had more blacks that moved into the middle class during the 80s than any other time in our history.
Let me also say that
we have a civil rights bill today that
on election promises. A major promise that he was critical of the Bush administration was about the Haitian policy, which he called a tragedy. He has indeed continued to have boats turned around in the middle of the sea there. The point is, what was he elected on? What were those principles, and is he being true to those? I think that right now it is a very confused, muddled picture, and my good Democratic friends here are trying to apologize and trying to change the subject. The subject is, where do we go from here? Let's not continue to look back. Let's say, let's move forward, and I maintain that's educational opportunity, job development, participation in the political process, and improving the health status of our citizens. What we need to do is find, how do we improve those many challenges I think we all agree that exist? Let's get out of the blame game and say, okay, how do we move forward?
And I think a number of African Americans should look at themselves and try to see how we can change our society from a welfare perspective, from a two-family home perspective.
But that's not to say that the government doesn't have some responsibility.
The government should ensure equal opportunity, should ensure justice, but the government should not be asked to provide all the jobs for our country.
Isn't that really the fault line that the two of you have just been discussing that now exists within the civil rights movement? Do we need to have more government involvement to help minority Americans, or is it going? I know that you're an advocate, for example, of more self-help.
The government has the resources. We have seen that this government can help to rebuild Japan. It can help to rebuild Europe, and it needs to rebuild the devastated American cities. We have had a scourge of poverty, of joblessness, of people who are using the criminal justice system as our only urban policy, and I think the government can play an important leadership role in trying to correct these things and making the connections between racism and economic justice, between racism and the criminal justice system.
I think government has a role to play.
It's both and. It's not either or, it's both and.
Yeah,
the government must not retreat from its leadership responsibility.
That's true, but the government doesn't create business. The government doesn't create jobs.
Nor should we try to tilt the scale in such a manner that it causes both races to polarize themselves, become polarized.
Well, and I think
that can happen, because whenever people would see an injustice, regardless of what color it may be, they strike out in a very negative type manner.
But for a long time, I know that many of the ideas that you advocate, self-help, up by the bootstraps types arguments, that has been used for years as an excuse for the government to do nothing, hasn't it?
No, the government has a role to play. Let me point out, you use the example of rebuilding Japan and rebuilding Europe. What the U.S. government did was help to create the environment where the Europeans rebuilt Europe, the Japanese rebuilt Europe. And I agree with Gary that what we need to have are governmental policies that allow job development, that encourage job development. But indeed, all of us in the black community and other communities need to be providing that leadership. We can't look to government to solve all this. Having served in the government for 4 years, I can tell you the government is a big bureaucracy that indeed doesn't do a lot of things well. But what it can do is help to provide the resources. But all of us need to work to provide jobs and economic empowerment.
I came across an interesting statistic the other day. In 1963, polls showed that 25% of African Americans believed that relations between blacks and whites would always be a problem in America. A new poll just out shows that figure has now gone to 55%. What accounts for this pessimism, this growing pessimism?
Well, I think I'm a classic example of the reverse. I got elected in a 90% white district, showing that we are getting closer to living in a colorblind society.
But the polls don't bear this out.
Well, I think
Gary, is such an anomaly.
Well, you have Mr. Wilder, he's an anomaly. You have Mrs. Braun, she's an anomaly. I can go on. You have Mr. Brooks, he was an anomaly.
You're able to count all of them on one
I can
hand.
continue on. This is only a half-hour show, but I can
Professor,
continue on,
your views,
believe me.
why the apathy?
I think Gary's point is good.
I can
The fact
continue,
is,
believe me.
there are many more black elected officials now than ever in the history of this country. Sure, there's a lot more to do. We have many problems, but let's not ignore or deny the progress that's been made. Because, because part of that problem resulting in that poll, I believe, is a misperception, a misunderstanding of reality in the minds of many of our young people.
A final thought?
I think that the apathy or the sense of alienation is profound, it is real, and we have to deal with it.
Thank you very much. That's all the time we have this week. Paula Zahn will have all of the day's news and the latest on the progress of Hurricane Emily later on the CBS Sunday Evening News. Bob Schieffer will be back next week, so plan on joining him for another Face the Nation.
Every year, the importance of this land increases because every year there are a lot more mouths to feed. Over 95 million more, a figure greater than the population of Mexico. Fortunately, the food ingredients that Archer Daniels Midland makes from America's harvests can help feed people the world over. Food ingredients such as flour, protein, vegetable oils, and corn sweeteners. Making food and feed ingredients to meet our growing nutritional needs. That's why ADM is supermarket to the world.
Retirement years should be secure years. That's why Merrill Lynch has a gerontologist to help us understand the social, emotional, and financial needs these years bring. That extra insight can make a difference between seeking security and finding it. The difference is Merrill Lynch.
This portion of Face the Nation was sponsored by the Archer Daniels Midland Company, ADM, supermarket to the world. And by Merrill Lynch. For clients around the world, we make a difference. The difference is Merrill Lynch. If you'd like to write to Face the Nation, send your letters to Bob Schieffer, Face the Nation, 2020 M Street Northwest, Washington, D.C., 20036. This broadcast was produced by CBS News, which is solely responsible for the selection of today's guests and topics. It originated in Washington, D.C.
Experience CBS News.
Security guards make you feel safe? That could be a big mistake. Find out why some of them are such...
Solution to environmental crises now extends to the farmlands and waterways of the Klamath Basin, where they'll fight century-old farm enterprise and water management to restore the Klamath River and its basin to what it used to be. Sounds noble, but reduced to the basics, the question seems to be, shall the fishing and rafting enterprise of the tourist industry upset the economic equilibrium of an established agricultural economy? It's also a risky-sounding enterprise, but it is worth some examination. But in another enterprise, the ONRC has jumped into the middle of a motion picture in the making on protected areas of the Rogue River. This is where the tomfoolery comes in. The council has objected to low-flying helicopters making multiple trips over a wild section of the river. When a company like Universal Pictures decides it wants to make an environmentally sensitive film on seldom-seen reaches of the Rogue, what's the problem? Disturbing the airspace? Heavens to Betsy, we didn't realize things were that bad. I'm Rick Myers.
If you would like to respond to this editorial, write feedback, KATU, Post Office Box 2, Portland, Oregon, 97207.